Hello everyone. So today we'll do neural networks and the topic will be gradient descent. So last class we had seen an introduction to neural networks and also the forward propagation. So let us have a quick recap. So this was the single neuron which did the same thing as the logistic regression. So it input these features and outputs a single label, and the activation function can be anything. We'll discuss some more activation functions other than sigmoid. So then this was the overall architecture of a neural network. This is with two hidden layers. These are the two hidden layers, these two, and this one is the input features and this one is the output label. Next we had discussed the dimensions. So if you take the hidden layer to be 5 neurons, then x was n cross m, where m is the number of examples. We had seen how we find omega 1 by seeing the number of neurons in the next layer and in the previous layer. So here it is L1 and here it is n. Next we had seen the size of B1. Similarly we found Z1 by doing omega cross x. Then we found omega 2 by looking at this layer and this layer size. Then we found V2 and also Z2 by multiplying these two. Next we also looked at forward propagation. So first we input the input features. We have the input features, we have our omega and b which we initialize, and then from there we find z, pass it through this activation function and we get a. Then again we repeat the same process for the next layer. For the next layer a1 becomes the input, so this one becomes the input, and again we calculate z1, and similarly a2 is, since it is the output layer, a2 will be our predicted label. Now before moving on to the backward propagation, we will look at the types of activation functions. So this one is the tanh activation function, which is generally used. So this one gives output in between -1 and 1, and you can also see it from this equation. So if x is very large, suppose x tends to infinity, then we can see that e raised to power x goes to infinity, this one goes to 0, and similarly this goes to 0. So we have e raised to power x. So this thing, this y tends to 1. The same way, if x tends to minus infinity, then what will happen is, this term and this term will remain, these two will go to 0, and when these two cancel out, we will be remaining with -1. So you can see here this goes to -1, and in the positive x-axis side it goes till +1. So this activation function is very commonly used. There are many other activation functions, but I will only show you the ones which are most commonly used. Next is the ReLU activation function. So this is the most used one. We don't generally use tanh, but ReLU is the most used one. So it is defined as this: if the function is less than 0, then it changes it to 0, and if it is more than 0, then the function remains as it is. So you can see here, so this red line is the this red line here is the input function, and this black dotted line which you can see, which goes from here to here, is the output line. So it is very simple. Whenever it is more than 0, so in this region the output is the same as the input. So you can see that in this region the input and output overlaps, and if it is less than 0 in this region, the output is simply 0. So it is a very simple function, and it is also very widely used. This is the sigmoid function we had seen. The output is between 1 and 0. On the positive side, when it goes to infinity, the output is 1, and on the negative side it goes to 0. This sigmoid function is generally used in the last layer. It is not used in the middle layers. In the middle layers, mostly the tanh or the Rayleigh activation function is used. Sigmoid is used in the last layer. So one thing with sigmoid was that it only gave one output. So suppose if we want to classify whether the image is a cat or a non-cat picture, then we can output 0 and 1. But if we want to classify 3 things, suppose cat, dog and bird, then we need to have 3 outputs. So at that point of time we use this softmax function. So here's the formula. So it may look complicated. Let me explain. So suppose these are the 3 layers, and after and suppose here this is 3, this is 0.1, and this one is 1. So what this does is it outputs. Here it will be e raised to power 3 by e raised to power 3 plus e raised to power 0.1 plus e raised to power 1, and this thing will be placed here. Similarly, if we calculate for the other one, this will be e raised to power 0.1 by this same thing, e raised to power 3 plus e raised to power 0.1 plus e raised to power 1. This thing will go here, and by the same logic you can also figure out that here the numerator would be e raised to power 1 and the denominator would be same as this one. So after we get all of these sum would add up to 1. Since you can see if we add this one and this one, so the output would be 1. So while using a softmax function, we get 3 outputs here, and each of these add to 1, and based on that we can find out which is the predicted label. Suppose this one, the first one, comes out to be around 0.8, and this one 0.15, and the last one is 0.05. then we can say that we'll choose this label, and suppose this label corresponds to bird and this dog and this cat, then our model will predict that this is a bird. And similarly, if this dog is the maximum one, then our model will predict that it is a dog, and similarly for cat. So when we use binary classification, just like 0 or 1, then we can use the sigmoid function. But if we want to do multi-class classification, then we have to go for the softmax function. And one more thing is that both softmax and the sigmoid function is used in the last layer, since it is generally used for the classification thing. Okay, now we have initialized our parameters, which was the omega and b. So we need to train those parameters so our model will be more accurate. We have seen in our previous models that we have used the method of gradient descent. We find that derivatives, and according to that we update our parameters. So we will do a similar thing in this thing also. So I'll give the formulas of the derivatives. So first we find dz2, which is the derivative of z2, as a2 minus y. Then we find the derivative of d omega 2, which is this one, as this formula. I'm just skipping through these since these are just formulas, you have to just code it down. And the derivative of dv2 is, so I have written the Python code here, 1 by m np dot sum dz2, and axis 1 means it will add it along the rows. If you don't give axis equal to 1, then what it will do is add all the elements in the entire 2D matrix and it will give one single output. We don't want that. We want that the addition should be done along the rows. And keep dims equal to true makes the output dimension same as this input 1. So what happens if we don't give this is our input array is a 2D array, and if we sum it along the rows, then we will eventually get a 1D array. And if we don't give keep dims true, then it will output a 1D array. But you can see that most of our arrays in this are 2D arrays, so we want a uniformity. So for that reason we add this keeps dim equal to true, and the dimension of this matrix stays 2. So this the dimension of this matrix is 2. It won't change. If we don't give this one, then it will change to 1. So we generally give it to make the dimension constant across all the matrices we are using. Next, in similarly way, these 3 steps are again repeated for the next layer. We find dz1. Okay, this thing is the element wise multiplication. So suppose we have 2 matrices here, a1 b1 c1 and d1, and 2 matrices, one matrix here, a2 b2 c2 and d2. So in normal matrix multiplication, what we do is we multiply a1 a2 plus b1 c2, but this is not normal multiplication, this is just simple element wise multiplication. So this would result as a1 a2 at the first cell and b1 b2 here, c1 c2 here, and d1 d2 here. So this is what is meant by the element wise operation. Next we find d omega, and this d here means transpose, this is x transpose. Finally we find db1, which is again this Python code, and since we want to keep the dimension same, which is 2, so we have written keep dims equal to true. Okay, why this 2 came 2 equal to 1 is not there. This is this should be dz1, this is dz1. Okay, so after we have find out the derivatives, you know that what we did, we just updated the parameters. Suppose in logistic regression, what we did, omega we updated as omega minus alpha times d omega, and since we didn't have a separate b variable there, so the updation would perform here itself. But now since we have a b here, so we have to update b also. So it would be like this, b equal to b minus db, and we have to do this for all layers. So we have to do this first for omega 1 and b1, and then we have to do for omega 2, and similarly for b2. And if there are more layers, then we have to keep on repeating the process and update all the parameters. So this whole one thing is known as one backward propagation. And so actually what is happening is we are going backwards. Let me first clear this slide. Okay, what we are doing in gradient descent, we are actually going backwards and calculating all the gradients and updating the parameters. Since you can see we start from dz2, which is here, and then we are going all the way till dz1, which is here. So we are moving backwards. So this is known as backprop or backward propagation. And the earlier steps which we had seen was the forward propagation, where we found out the label A2. So that was forward propagation. So this was the overall backward and forward propagation, and we keep on repeating this backward and forward propagation, and we also keep on updating the parameters. And to keep a check on how our algorithm is performing, we also have a loss function. So with that function we keep on checking how our algorithm is performing, and if after some time the accuracy is almost constant, so we stop the gradient descent after that. One more thing is that all of these formulas are not so important, but for just knowing the theory, I've told you. If you use Python, then there's a library TensorFlow, and there it is very easy to implement this. You won't have to like write all the equations for backward propagation. You just have to uh, give the parameters for the layers. For example, how many layers you want to add, and how many neurons will be in each of these layers, and so on. And all these backward propagation or forward propagation will be handled by TensorFlow itself. But from the theory point of view, it is good to know. Okay. One last thing which is important to know is that while we are initializing this omega or beta, then we have to do random initialization, not that we just assign everything to 0 or everything to a constant value. Since you can see from this neural network architecture, if each of these arrows which corresponds to the omega, each of those are same, then there would be no difference between this cell, and this cell and this cell. So they all would output in similar way. And suppose each of these are also same, so all of these would also output in similar way. There would be no difference. Okay, so for that a random initialization is necessary. And again, all these are not important when implementing in the practical application, since random initialization or gradient descent or the vector sizes, all of these are handled by TensorFlow. I think you just have to give the input size for the input layer, which is this one. In our case it was n cross m, and all of the sizes of the subsequent layers TensorFlow calculates it by itself, so we don't need to worry about it. Okay, so that was all about artificial neural networks. Thank you.